Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning to all of you. I want to begin by noting Mr. Kenna's long and distinguished career in public service, which includes more than 40 years in his role as BLM director for the state of California. So I want to thank you for your service, for your dedication to protecting our cherished public lands, not just in California, but especially in California. And there's a number of great examples from your time there of successful resource management plan development. We successfully brought thousands of stakeholders together to establish the Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan. I know you're more than intimately familiar with this, the DRECP, which focuses on 10.8 million acres of public lands across 7 counties in California. The DRECP is a landscape-level plan that streamlines renewable energy development while conserving unique and valuable desert ecosystems. The DRECP is a success story on incorporating robust public and tribal participation into land use planning, and it's a great example of working collaboratively to ensure that all stakeholders benefit from BLM's multiple use mandate. So I share all that not just to thank you, to point out a success story, but to ask you, Mr. McKenna, can you discuss how the energy permitting landscape looked in the California desert before successful implementation of the DRECP, and how the plan actually helped provide that certainty, the transparency, and the efficiency for the energy industry after it was adopted?
Thank you, Senator, for your comments. I think this is a really important thing to be clear. One of the characterizations we've heard so far is that the land use planning is sort of a combative or adversarial relationship between the state and the federal government. That was certainly not my experience in California. It started with a Republican governor and a Secretary of Interior and a Democratic administration setting up an agreement that was the umbrella to the entire process. In terms of what the things were like when we started, nobody really anticipated the flood of applications that happened with renewable energy. We had 15 to 20 coming in the door at the time. There were 6 to 10 that were active, and they're all in different stages and frankly with very different applicants. We had everything from Florida Power and Light, a very sophisticated operator that operates globally, to startups that had ideas about where they wanted to put a wind farm. So that is a variable that is really important, and it has a lot of impact and control on timeline, is the applicant itself. But there are also the things we've talked about before, like capacity to do the work. And then you have to go to the issues and let that steer the process, because the content of what's going on in the case of the DRECP that you mentioned, you're in a national conservation area that was congressionally designated in 1976. So as a starting point, you've got to have a robust, reliable conservation design, and the governor and the secretary agreed on that. But then you also have a very complex system that you're overlaying and working with. You have interstate transmission of power, how California fits to the grid, how things move across, and then how that all fits together with transmission and generation. So it's a complex process, and there are a lot of people who have unique information that you need to get from point A to point B at the end of the process. So hopefully that's responsive to your question, Senator.
Yeah, no, I appreciate how you began your response by saying this process isn't meant to be, a barrier, an obstacle necessarily. To the contrary, I've used in this committee in other hearings what's known as the Carpenter's rule, right? Measure twice, you cut once. If you do the appropriate engagement, including, by the way, I want to put an emphasis on tribal consultation, genuine tribal consultation, not just box checking. You get the information. You need to be thoughtful on the front end, whether you're in the development of a plan or in the context of, national monuments, for example, just the designation of the exact perimeters. You can, better protect ecosystems that are worth protecting and why, and establishing clear energy development opportunities, renewable or otherwise, because you're informed on the front end. And I think it does save you time on the back end, whether it's through litigation, whether it's through revisiting plans or boundaries, et cetera. But it takes that thoughtfulness, open-mindedness, and due diligence on the front end. That's the point that we're trying to make. So thank you for your response. Thank you all for your testimony.
Absolutely, Senator.